So when I was growing up, I thought interest groups were a kind of shady, dark organisation with a lot of money, and it was them and us. And as I was thinking about interest groups, I realised that I think there is a new technology enables a new sort of interest group that is very spontaneous and virtual. It's not a real organisation in the way we think of clusters of people working together, but yet it has a really powerful voice. So it may come into existence like a swarm of bees, have a very powerful impact, and then dissipate afterwards. So that's really what I want to talk about, and I'm going to do it with 3 stories, I hope, to illustrate the power of this interest group via social media. I thought I should start with you'll forgive me if you're more familiar with social media than I am, but I give just a little short summary of what I'm talking about, which is Facebook and Twitter primarily. So these things are enabled by the internet. They're all about broadcasting information, putting it out and sharing it across the network. Facebook is long, it's a long line of social networking tools. But I think what distinguishes it, what makes it so powerful, is the number of users. So there's about 1.2 billion users use Facebook. They use it for business, for political, to express messages, but often they use it to share messages in their life with their friends and families. But with 1.2 billion users, that's a fifth, a sixth of the world's population. That really is a very, very powerful influence. Twitter then is like texting in public. So you get 140 characters, you choose whether you want to do it or not, and you send that message out there. And you decide what people you want to listen to, and they decide if they want to listen to you or not. And that can be informed by exactly how boring you are, is how few listeners you have. But that one is not quite as powerful as Facebook. You're looking at 271 million users across the world, and some of them may be robots. They're not real people, they're automated messages. But it's still a very powerful tool for people that do engage with it. So I wanted to show how these tools can be used to influence and to create these kind of spontaneous interest groups. So I'm going to tell 3 stories. I picked them, there's nearly endless choice here in picking what story you could illustrate these points with. And these ones I was interested in, they're all a little bit morally ambiguous, I think. And so probably you'll have a response to the story and feel like you're a part of that conversation as well. And I think that's an important part of social media, that it's not as simple and clear cut. So the first one is Justine Sacco. She was a senior director of corporate communications at an American PR company. And I was particularly interested in this one because I joined social media. I joined Twitter, not actually on Facebook. As in most good Irish things, it started in a pub where my friends signed me into the system, telling me I would not regret this decision. And I haven't. It's been very interesting. But this one kind of happened in real time for me. So this, she was 30, white, I suppose in a position of privilege as a director of a communications company. And she tweeted on her way to, she was going on holiday to Africa, and I'm going to quote the tweet. It's only 140 characters, so it won't take that long. She said, "Going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding, I'm white!" exclamation mark. So you will have a response to that, of course. And so, I mean, clearly that was a very ill-judged tweet. But what happened, she boarded the plane, she had to switch her phone off for 10 hours while she was on the flight, and the message got picked up. Now, there would be any amount of racist and discriminatory messages across Facebook and Twitter at any time. But this one got picked up and magnified, and people started retweeting it. And it built up such a momentum in the 10 hours while she was sleeping on the plane that by the time the plane landed and she disembarked, there were journalists waiting in the airport in Africa for her. There was tens of thousands of angry people saying that she should be fired and she was a disgrace. And she was met at the airport, and she was fired by her company later that day. And for me, it was very interesting because I followed it in real time. I felt, I saw the tweet and I thought, this is really terrible. I had an emotional response to it. That is an awful thing. And I felt part of the community that were, it's called public shaming, that were shaming her. So they were retweeting it with commentary and so on. And I felt on the side of that. And when the story ends, when she arrives in Africa and she's fired, and you feel a sense of moral rightitude, the right thing happened. But I was interested to see that a Welsh journalist, John Ronson, followed up with Justine Sacco after this. So a few months later, he caught up with her in New York, and he said how had this impacted her life. And she was in tears, and she'd been fired. She publicly apologised. She deleted her account. I certainly would say she never tweeted like that again. But she was basically unemployable. And she was very upset by it, but very keen to correct the record. So she wanted to explain that she had meant it in irony. It was clearly a joke. She didn't understand why people had misunderstood it, and so on. And he caught up with her again months after that, and he asked her how her life had changed now, and would she be interviewed on the record. And she said absolutely not, and she wouldn't engage with him at all. She had managed to find another job, and she had lost the wish, I suppose, to correct the record, and she thought the only way that she could fix her life was to completely disengage from any form of publicity like that. So it was interesting, I suppose, and the question is about the proportionality of the response. So if she did something wrong, was that the right, was the response proportional? There's another, probably a more famous case, which is Lindsay Stone. This happened in 2012. She was a care worker in Living Independently Forever, which she was a care worker for autistic children. Herself and her co-worker went on a trip with the children, and they went to Arlington National War Cemetery. And she had this habit of taking pictures, disrespectful pictures, you might say. So there's a sign at the Arlington Cemetery that says, be respectful, no smoking, no... I can't remember the details, but it was no vulgarity, no mobile phones, no smoking. So she set herself up in a photo where she was pretending to smoke. I think she was she gave the finger, and she was shouting on a mobile phone. And her friend posted it on Facebook, and they thought it was pretty funny. And nothing happened for about a month, and then a month later it got picked up somebody found it and retweeted it into the American veteran networks, and it erupted, another one that erupted overnight. People set up Facebook accounts called Fire Lindsay Stone that had something like 20,000 likes, and basically it blew up. Again, my own opinion would be out of proportion to the crime that led to it. And she was fired, and she had to delete all her social media and so on. She said she spent a year depressed, insomniac, and she couldn't leave her home. She couldn't find another job, and she had media outside her house and so on. And basically her life as she had known it and had been very fond of it was completely gone. So this same Welsh journalist caught up with Lindsay, and he interviewed her about a sense of how her life had been destroyed, and he wanted to see if it were possible to fix this situation. I mean, from a journalist's perspective, to see if it's possible to repair your reputation. And he connected her with an American company which does reputation management. You mightn't know such a thing exists, but indeed it does. And this company, what they try to do is they recognise how social media works, and they try to somehow rebalance. And what this meant for her was putting out social media posts about kittens, about Disneyland, about I love ice cream and I like sunny days. So basically a whole load of fluff that somehow would supersede the really vitriolic commentary and her own stupidity in the original photo. This company said that Google is really clever, and you have to be as clever in how you repair something like this as well, so that if you just put a load of stuff out about kittens and puppies, Google senses this and they correct their algorithms and you get pushed back down. But the journalist went back to her, this would be 2 years after she posted the photo in the first place, and asked her how had her life changed and were things improved. And when she Googled herself now, now, her wonderful joy was that it was not just this picture of her in the War Cemetery, that there were other Lindsay Stones that popped up, and there was even a picture of her with a kitten. You can see this if you look it up yourself. And I thought, how very sad, I suppose, that the most that you could hope for, if you used your voice on the internet in an inappropriate way, or not to say something that you meant to say, how sad it is that the only way that you can fix that, or you can reverse out of it, is through replacing it with something so inane that it somehow, it hopes to dissipate your actual real voice on something you might want to say, which in this case she said something she didn't mean to say. The last example I do quickly, because it's in the media at the moment, it's an ongoing one, and this is a young female human rights lawyer called Charlotte Proudman, and she used the LinkedIn network, which is like a professional Facebook, so you put up your CV basically and you try to connect with like-minded. I'm not sure of the value of it personally, but in any case she was using it as a professional network, and she was responded to by Alexander Carter Smith, who is a senior partner in a British law firm, and he replied, Charlotte, I'll quote it because it's another, I think, ambiguous case. Charlotte, delighted to connect. I appreciate this is probably horrendously politically incorrect. I'm trying to avoid what I imagine the accent sounds like, but that is a stunning picture. You definitely win the prize for best LinkedIn picture I have ever seen. And she responded very cross. She said this was very typical of sexism, and as a feminist, she felt that this was entirely inappropriate in a professional networking. And she responded angrily, and then she tweeted the picture of the correspondence. And somehow this got picked up again, and within a week, she was on the front page of the Daily Mail twice with headlines such as feminazi objects to harmless comment about her, nice comment about her appearance, feminazi, and so on. And somebody did an analysis of the Twitter response to her. She was getting 1 tweet per minute, and the key words in those tweets were death threats, so rape threats, death threats, condescending things like you're a very silly girl for doing this, accusations of attention seeking, which I would say that she certainly got more attention than she had anticipated, and predominantly comments like, I've seen more attractive women than you, so you shouldn't have said this. And I suppose her point, so this is an ongoing thing that's happening at the moment, her point is that a commentary on feminism proves the point that you need to comment on feminism, or sexism I should say, because of that response, and I suppose the really massive public weigh-in to silence her voice on that. So I try to bring those points together. They're all a little bit loose, but I think what we can see is that interest groups are not just powerful lobby groups of people with authority speaking for a single cause, but rather that, and particularly for young people where social media is such a key part of their engagement with their community and with life, I think, that it is possible to have this voice that you might not know that you have, and use it in interest groups that form very quickly and have really, really long-lasting effects on individuals. And in saying they're interest groups, maybe they aren't, because they do speak to sort of high-level interests, in this case, veteran and war groups and anti-feminism groups and so on. But essentially they're about the individual, and the effect is felt by the individual. And my concern would be for young people, are we giving them the tool of the social technology, but are we giving them the sort of the backbone or their own moral infrastructure and intellectual infrastructure to be able to use it wisely? So to have authentic morals and information, and to understand the difference between Wikipedia and Google, and speaking from the National Library, the importance of going to archives and trusted sources for information as you form your opinion, because your opinion is important and your voice can be very strong.
Thank you very much.